Hey, greetings, everybody. Keith here. Hoping everybody's having a good day, enjoying life, living life, loving life. As always, and of course, I want to thank everybody for your support. In the meantime, remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button if you're on Keith Little, El Perro, or Hecklebus. Get on over to the other channels, do the same, help the algorithm. There's some PayPal links down below if anybody wants to share some love. And of course, the StreamYard link is there for anybody that wants to jump on panel. If you guys remember the last time we discussed the state's vital statistics jurisdiction, it was the video called Mousetrap. As you see, the title's upside down and everything funny. Go back to that one, and that'll discuss the birth registration process. Tonight, we're going to continue on with the second part of that, talking about the death certificate and the other graph. We're going to show you some variances between the two and explain some things, events that go on throughout your life. And so hang on. Remember, there is no speed limit, no brake pedal, and no seat belts. Okay. If you guys remember in that first video, we went over the NCVHS, the National Committee on Vital Health Statistics. Vital records and vital statistics in the United States. Remember, in the United States. United States is the debtor and is located in Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. is the 10 square mile boundary, which is a physical location in their territorial jurisdiction, which is the record system. Now, that record system is known as the United States. You will not find the United States in a physical locality except to be expressed on maps as a territorial overlay, including the 50 states. Uses, users, systems, and sources of revenue. Venue would be the one source or a prior source from which it was then revenued. So it is a sources of resource. Sources of resource. Conducted for the National Committee, that would be pretty much synonymous. Conducted for the National Committee on Vital and Health, and they couldn't even spell it right. Heath. Statistics. These are the kind of people you have in government, folks. And you'll notice when you look this site link up, I believe it's down in the details section. If not, I'll go ahead and drop it. In the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and drop it in the chat now for anybody that's here. You can go ahead and just drop onto this site and follow along. But you see, this is got a little padlock up in that search bar when you look this up. So it is a secured government site. So again, published through the government publishing office through their styles manual, and they can't even spell sometimes. Quite the censorship program and quite the proofreading program. Vital statistic or vital records and vital statistics in the United States. So it's vital records and vital statistics in the records of the United States, because that's all it is. And then you've got uses, the various different uses, whether it be medical, military, health, education, stocks, bonds, investments, whatever. Users, systems, and sources of revenue, resources. And all of these are commercial. Vital records and vital statistics is regulated by the Department of Commerce. This report was prepared under contract by R. Gibson Parrish, MD. And you go ahead and read This is NCVHS, National Committee on Vital Health Systems, or Vital Health Statistics, membership and lead staff. So if you've got a lead staff, that would be the head agency or the grantee. And then the membership would be consisting of its trustees in a trust with a constructed contract. So these are the contracting parties, and it's under a postal trust because it's something posted in a venue, a public venue. So who's the beneficiary? Who's the benefactor? The one that's reading it and informing themselves of the contract held in trust. The National Committee on Vital and Health Statistics serves as the advisory committee to the Secretary of Health and Human Services on health data, statistics, privacy, national health information policy, and the health insurance portability, the ability to report it through sources and resources, sources and revenue, and Accountability Act. Accountability is the ability to post data elements or press numbered keys or other identifiers for that accounting. The committee, and it's for that accounting and nothing else, the accounting of the events. The committee also serves as a forum for interaction with interested private sector groups on important health data issues. So it's the data elements that you issued throughout all those applications, registrations, employment forms, all of that. Those are data issues. You issued the data elements. Its membership includes experts in health statistics, electronic interchange, not exchange, but interchange of healthcare information, privacy, confidentiality, and security of electronic information. Every keystroke, when you press numbered or other identifiers, every keystroke is time-stamped and securitized by that timestamp. Population-based public health. This is why it's important to remember there are private sector groups that need to help fix the situation. Purchasing or financing healthcare services. So if you didn't purchase the healthcare services through the SS5, then did you finance them? Did you recognize that you were a creditor and make the qualifying statements showing that you were the creditor and that no public liability can be placed? No, of course not. You weren't taught this. Integrated computerized health information systems, health services research. We're going to see this tonight. I'm going to show you some variances between that birth certificate process chart and the death certificate process chart we're going to look at. Consumer interests in health information, and the consumer interests are the commercial interests, whereas the customer interest is a foreign and private interest. In health information, health data standards, and this is where I talk about the variances from categorical pre-treatment standards that are fundamentally different in nature. We're going to mention that here shortly. Epidemiology, which is the study of the causes and patterns of diseases. Has nothing to do with the cures, but just the study of causes and patterns. There is no, they provide no remedy. And the provision of health services. 16 of the 18 members are appointed by the HHS Health and Human Services Secretary to terms of 4 years each. So this is January 2018, so there's got to be a new one out. If not, then the predicated implication is that they still go by this, unless something has been repealed somewhere invalidating this. 2 additional members are selected by Congress. For more information, And here we're going to look at the table of contents. And just by the order that this is put in, we're going to get some realizations, I hope. This is what I hope to impress upon you guys, is there is a certain format that these processes follow. And if you understand the format, and this is why I say get a concise English or a concise, a college composition handbook, so you can learn the construction of documentation, record keeping. It says background and purpose. So you always have to, a gentleman announces his presence. And in that presence, he announces his purpose and where he's coming from, his background and his purpose. Terminology. So he's going up and he's stating his background and purpose, but he's got to do it in a linguistic way with another one that comprehends that same language. So they've got to decide the terminology they're going to use. Approach, objective, subjective, what objective, what subjective, is there an intermixing or a variance? Findings. This is interesting. Overview of birth and death registration. Birth and death registration. So it's not a birth registration and then a death registration. Here it says overview of birth and death registration. But there's something distinctly wrong with this statement if you understand that the birth registration is the establishment of a constructive burial trust within the state of a probate estate that states there's no will. If that's already done, then why do you need to register a death? The only reason you need to register the death then would be to settle the account through the burial trust. Uses and users, and that's who that trust would go to, is the uses and users. And if it's a burial trust and it's known to be for the benefactor, and that benefactor is buried, and then all of a sudden the state comes back and takes out of the estate for that the cost of that burial trust, there's again something wrong, because there was already an initial investment at the birth registration. And that something wrong is that there's no definitive proper chain of title. Something's wrong in the very beginning, and we've discussed this. The proper declaration was not made. Mom and dad did not declare properly. Instead, they registered a birth. Uses and users of identified birth and death records. So again, I'm telling you, in the code itself, 422, or excuse me, 20 CFR 422.103, it talks about the identification. And it says the individual's name and number identify the record. So in between the birth record and death record, like I said, there's other events that are going to create other records. But all of those records under the administration and execution, or whatever you want to call it, those are just different state contacts. The birth registration was the first minimum state contact that created an extensive series of events throughout one's life that created more and more state contacts. Because everybody in their life has been told you need to go to college, and after you graduate from high school that was already indoctrinated you into believing that if you were a young man, you had to register for the Selective Service, that you also had to get a Social Security card and carry that with you, or at least have it available for legal use. And then you had to take a birth certificate and a Social Security card down to the DMV and get a license or an ID so you get a job, so you get a motor vehicle, you get to and from job. No, that's all false. Those are just creations of minimum state contacts that are presumption of a legal fiction. That's all it is. All you have to do is break the presumption. Not qualified, not a resident, a foreign private being, not organized, don't have a board of directors to hire an attorney to make a representation in an administrative court over a probated estate. I am, in fact, the living heir, the legacy heir of the living word of the living God, and I do by his will. Then the next one, interestingly enough, says uses and users of de-identified natality. Not nationality, but de-identified natality, birth. So you de-identify the birth. How do you de-identify the birth? You salvage it. This is a salvation, a redemption by merging with a new name. It's Form 715, Department of Defense. Declassification. Taking out all the private data elements and establishing the private sector. And mortality, death, data sets. Oops. Data sets. Sources of revenue, resource for vital records offices. For vital records offices. Now, the vital records offices, again, folks, are regulated by the Department of Commerce. This is the very entrance into the commercial world. It is an entrance into the Admiralty Maritime commercial sector, as if though you're a resident, a public officer or agent by extension of a federal, state, or municipality claiming resident and United States citizenship, dual citizenship. They talk about conclusions, references, appendixes, abbreviations and acronyms, brief descriptions of selected uses and users. Selected uses and users. If you're not in that system, then you're not supposed to be using it. Yet somehow they allow you to use it. Why is that? Because somewhere you are part of it, but you're just not named. You are in fact not a contractor, but in a contract, but involved in the trust under which that contract is formed. And therefore your use is by the benefactor. You're the ones placing the facts on the record. You're the one placing the data elements on the record. You're the one giving all of that information. You have the right to take it back. I apologize. I've been making errors. I've had accidents. Continuous and repeated exposure to the same conditions causing public liability that the insured never expected nor intended. Had I known this before, I would have never signed up for Social Security. I would have explained the difference at age of majority, that I am competent to take upon my own conduct of my own plenipotentiary powers. If I'm not competent, I will seek the proper counsel, and not a legal counsel, but an educational counsel. My people are perished for lack of knowledge. I don't wish to die, and therefore the only remedy is the knowledge, not legal representation, medical representation, political representation, religious representation. Got to get out of that, folks. And real quick, I want to remind everybody to please hit that like, share, and subscribe button. If you're on Keith Little, El Perro, or Hecklebus, get on over to the other ones and do the same. There are PayPal links down in the details section for anybody that wants to share some love. And of course, the StreamYard link is down there for anybody that wants to come jump on the panel. Okay, we're going to get back to it. We've got a little bit of reading, but again, the link to this should be in the details section, and it is. I did put it in the comments section for anybody that wants to pull that up and look for yourself. But it's going to talk about the electronic verification of vital events, EVE, Death Master File, DMF, electronic verification, again, another EVE, FOD, fact of death. Fact of death. Fact of death is that the decedent record poses that somebody died and that therefore there was no living will and that they are administrating over the estate of a dead man, when in fact the very name on that document relates directly to myself in the form of a man is the spirit and the man conducting the spiritual and manual events in life. Had I known this stuff before, I would have proclaimed the fact that you can't say that I've died. That birth record is false. It creates the establishment of a decedent record where, in fact, upon my 18th birthday, it was known that I was stating my own will and that I was my own authority. The only distinction was that I was taking upon a voluntary system, placating that I was a resident and United States citizen, and not knowing otherwise, it laid that legal presumption of the facts. So the fact of death is hereby rebutted and has been stated in Scott versus McNeil that no court of probate has jurisdiction over a person who is in fact alive. Now the next one is the National Death Index. Remember, I spoke about the financial index. There's a military index. There's a congressional index. There's an interstate identification index. They all require some kind of signature. State and territorial exchange. Interchange. State and territorial exchange. So the state has one jurisdiction. The territorial exchange is under 18 U.S.C. 7. Special, as we mentioned earlier, special and specific. Special, maritime, territorial jurisdiction. And it is an exchange between the United States and the states, not the United States and the state and the private sector. Okay, so of vital events system. And since the United States doesn't have a birth registration, they have to be able to exchange information with the states. So background and purpose. The National Committee on Vital and Health Statistics serves as the advisory committee to the Secretary of Health and Human Services on health data, statistics, privacy, standards, National Health Information Policy, and Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA. In this capacity, it provides advice and assistance to the department and serves as a forum for interaction with stakeholders on key issues. And that key issue is key, definition of key under postal terms. To press, number keys, or other identifiers. So the key issue is the data elements that were given. They were keyed into an electronic record system known as the electronic book entry system, and it is a conversion from the definitive paper form. So again, we're dealing with an electronic record keeping system, but it has to be supported with a document, a paper document, either way, by intent. Related to population health, standards, privacy and confidentiality, And why is nobody talking about the privacy of being entered into a public record? See, once you're entered into that public record as a supposed employee, now they want to violate the privacy under civil rights, claiming that you have privileges under civil rights and that you have to follow certain statutes because you took upon or undertook the various different vital statistic events going on in life. Employment, that's a vital statistic event. Politics, voting, driving, they're all vital statistics because it's commercially driven. And confidentiality, and there's that fidelity, with fidelity, and data access and use, access and use, not possession, access and use, control and entry and control. Okay, that's a legal title. You hold the equity title, and the equity title says you can remove the data elements that you gave them. That's a gift, and you can take that gift back if it's being detrimental to you. You have the right to salvage the accounting. You have a right to correct the accounting. Because the National Vital Statistics System plays a critical role in monitoring the health of the nation. Notice that's not capitalized. Conducting public health surveillance, and that health surveillance is overseeing the record that they undertook and hold and are the obligated parties. Understanding the effectiveness of the healthcare and health financing system. Physicians, heal thyself. It doesn't cost you a damn thing. And supporting business and commerce. So your healthcare is supporting business and commerce. And like I said, that vital statistics is regulated by the Department of Commerce. You cut that out and there is no commerce. It's a mandatory and automatic declassification. DD Form 715. The NCVHS is exploring the state of the existing NVSS and identifying ways to improve the system. I am coming forth with a way to improve the system by identifying the proper data elements that need to be corrected before being put in or just not being allowed to be entered to begin with because they do not qualify. Not a member of the military. I am not and cannot enter into your battle of the forms. The goal of NCVHS exploration is the answer to the following question. How do we transform today's vulnerable vital records data collection network? The vital records data collection network is not the vulnerable party here. I want to remind everybody, every last one of you, all of you moms, dads, grandmas, grandpas, great-grandpas, great-grandmas, and hallelujah if there's still great-great-grandparents out there. Great-great-great-grandparents, listen. The vulnerable party are the desolate children of the unmarried wife. As folk growed, boys and girls, I would think it'd be imperative that every last one of us stand up for the vulnerable party, the one that has no say in it, and learn how to stand up for them and speak boldly as you ought to. Into a network of state systems that produce accurate and timely information supporting the breadth of local, state, and federal data needs. The only thing they need is the data elements. And the reason they need them is for the commercial, or for supporting business and commerce, as it said earlier. Those data elements are the very framework of business and commerce. As part of this exploration, NCVHS held a hearing on next generation vital statistics, identifying the essential elements of the vital statistics system, assess the system's current status and risks, insurance risks to its viability. And again, I'm telling you, if you quit putting those data elements in there, in air, then it will automatically become more viable. And granted, it may not make as much money, or it might lose money, or might lose business or commerce here or there. But again, and you might even think it might put a lot of people out of work. But again, by recognizing a need in a private sector, it will then start forming and generating growth in that area that too will support business and commerce by merely allowing you to recognize your own power, that you're not a debtor, but you are in fact the lender unto the nation. And those data elements are the ones that give the nation credit. Without them, they have nothing. Learn which ones to give them. Learn how to coin your words or purse your lips. Learn how to speak boldly as you ought to, with the weight of two. Even if you're a single mother, you're bearing a desolate child, and that is the redemption given unto the people automatically, not through Jesus Christ, but as inheritance of the servants of the Lord and their righteousness. That righteousness is not limited to just men. So again, I urge everybody, every last one of you big grown-up boys and girls, learn how to speak accordingly. That is the power of your word. It is redemption. And consider what actions are needed to protect and improve the system, and to counterbalance that and the detriment it causes to our little ones. We need all of you, again, big boys and girls, to act like big boys and girls and stand up. See something, say something. Hear something, say something. At the hearing, more than 25 agencies, organizations, and businesses testified about their use of and reliance on. Reliance, like reliability. It's a liability, and it's been a reinsurance and a reliability and a reliance on vital records and statistics. Again, supporting business and commerce for carrying out their day-to-day activities, the normal course of business. Representatives of the NVSS at the state, federal, and local levels also testified about the current status of the NVSS and its ongoing challenges. The agenda, testimony, and a transcript of the hearing are available on the NCVHS website, and a report, as according to its reportability or its portability, summarizing the hearing, is being prepared. I imagine it's probably out. You can probably go look at that. Following the hearing, members of the NCVHS, with the support of the National Center for Health Statistics, determined that it would, and that goes to determination, as in termination of one thing to clarify something else or something greater, that it would be useful to develop a companion report that would provide a summary of the uses and users of vital records and vital statistics, and an analysis of the types and sources of resources revenue available to vital records jurisdictions in the United States. Vital records jurisdictions. So again, that individual record has an exclusive state vital statistic jurisdiction of its own. Each one is separate and different than the other. The individual's name and number identify the record, and the state keeps a record on each one of you, which is exclusive to the other, and it is a vital statistic jurisdiction in and of itself. And they are all pooled and collected into the United States record to eventually be entered in by a birth registration into the National Archives. The intent of a birth registration at the beginning is the establishment of a nationality based on the natality that was improperly entered into the record without a balancing statement of the natality first. First in line, first in time. However, just because there's no record of it doesn't mean the event did not occur first. This is reason and logic that natality event did in fact occur first, because no one naturally is required to wait around for paperwork to be done before they can give birth or bear their child naturally. You see how that works? By reason and logic, there is an error in the entry of the record, no matter how you look at it. And the claim of an enumeration at birth is an impossibility. It only creates a presumption, and the entire system operates on that presumption, being a detriment to the one that is supposedly the legacy heir of the estate. That everyone can, by reason and logic, see and hear, in fact, to be alive. And in fact, by reason and logic, again, should be holding of a presumption that they have no authority over that other being of age and majority. You see how ridiculous people behave and why I call them bitch-ass slaves? Again, I only call them bitch-ass slaves because I was doing the same damn thing until I realized the idiocy of it. I'm not an idiot, and I know you're not either. But I know a lot of people take upon a convenience and don't want to come off of it. So let's continue on. Before I do, I want to remind everybody, please hit that like, share, and subscribe button if you're on Hecklebus, El Perro, or Keith Little. Get over to one of the other two channels and do the same, help with the algorithm. There's a PayPal link down in the details section for anybody who wants to share some love. And, of course, the StreamYard link is available for anybody that wants to join the panel. I do want to appreciate Galleon, Norman Longstaff, Freedom Fighter. Thanks for joining again. Russell Combs, yes, be frank. Frank means original, first in line, first in time, things like that. So let's go back to it. It says the purpose of this report is to present the uses, users, and sources of revenue for vital records and vital statistics. Nothing else. Not for you. Just the users and uses. And you really have no use for it. You can create your own and not have to use somebody else's public utility. That's a public utilization of another person created by a fiction. The information provided in this report contributes to the input. You're the one inputting everything in. You're the one putting everything in. You're the one setting everything in place. You're the one that's putting it set as this, as the asset. That's the asset. The input is the asset. And again, like I said many times, AI can never defeat man. AI will always be dependent upon a manual input being considered by the committee as it identifies and considers recommendations for approaches that would address the many challenges facing the NVSS at this time. They know and recognize there are many challenges. And like I said, those many challenges are the many errors in the many records that are created and established through a continuous and repeated exposure to the same conditions over and over again by people that are blind, following blind leaders. It's just idiocy. Terminology. Several terms are used to describe different aspects of the NVSS. Vital events are major life events for individuals. The individual is a person. It's a noun. Okay, that's that individual. It's only one. But as the individual, there's a class of individuals. That class of individuals are the ones noted by the enumeration at birth. That's the first classification, that before you become age of majority, there's a record kept, for a manual record kept for each individual. The presumption is that you were born as a resident and a United States citizen, saying that you were born in the United States. Yes, there's no birth registration in the United States. So there is no conclusive record that you were born in the United States. It is just a presumption. That presumption is the exchange, allows for an exchange of information with the state officials who actually did the enumeration at birth, which was merely an agreement between the federal government and the state government to provide such a process for the assignment of a number. The assignment of a number. That's an attachment to a name. And that is what creates the individual. And again, the name and number identify the record, not the living being. And include fetal death, stillbirth, birth, marriage, divorce, and death. The focus of this report is on two vital events, birth and death. However, in this report, as you saw earlier, it creates other events with the Department of Motor Vehicle, voter registration, birth certificate sale, a local registrar, things like that. Vital registration is the process of collecting, recording, and storing specific information on individual vital events. So the enumeration at birth is dependent upon a vital registration. So mom went in and registered at the hospital in a spell of illness, saying that she was ill. And that's a false declaration. Mom went in to bear her young, bring forth a legacy heir. And once that man was cast forth and discharged of his mother's waters, a declaration was supposed to be heralded unto the world that that legacy heir has taken his first breath and is now and forever to be known as an act of God. Oops. So simple. No name needed. Sorry, you won't need to know his name until he's of age and majority and wants to tell you what his name is. Otherwise, you'll have to operate through us. Stay the fuck away. He's ours. We are his trustees as a child of God ourselves, protecting children of Israel. You will not make merchandise of him. I don't know how complicated it seems to be to you people, but that's as simple as it gets. When this process is completed electronically, and of course storing specific information, special information. The specific information is the information you gave them because you're special. When this process is completed electronically, it is referred to as electronic vital event registration. That's the EVE. Examples include electronic birth registration and electronic death registration. Vital records are the product. It's a manufacturing of a product. It's a commercial process of producing something. Vital records are the product of vital registration. So the manufacturing is the facts that you, the man, are registering. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. And consist of completed paper or electronic forms that document vital events. It is not vital for you to know. It is vital for me to protect, because I know you can't and won't. The police have no duty to protect you, yet it's the police under martial law. Martial law chiefly affects the police and the collection of public taxes, revenue. This is for sources and revenue of the vital statistics. When this system completes vital registration electronically, it is referred to as an electronic vital event registration system. Examples include electronic birth registration system, EBRS, and electronic death registration system, EDRS. Vital Records Office is the government agency or organization within a state, local, or territorial jurisdiction. So we have 3 jurisdictions. We have the federal maritime territorial jurisdiction, which is the territorial jurisdiction. We have the state jurisdiction, which is a foreign trade zone jurisdiction. And we have the local jurisdiction, which is a municipality, which is a mayoral form of government. These are various different forms that they shop in, as we mentioned the other night, that is responsible for registering all vital events. Now, let me remind you that under 32 CFR, 31 CFR, 1604.2, Thirty-two CFR 1602.4, area office. And it says, this is national defense, other regulations relating to national defense. And I want you to remember, folks, again, that enumeration at birth has minimum birth registration requirements under Department of Defense, 5 USC 301, departmental regulations. And it says here for national defense, 32 CFR 1602.4, area office. Selective Service Office, which is responsible for all administrative and operational support for one or more local boards within its jurisdiction. So the responsible party for registering vital events in its jurisdiction, whether it be territorial, state, or local, is the Selective Service. Storing vital records and issuing certified copies of vital records for legal and administrative purposes. For legal and administrative purposes under the Selective Service, which is military. So the military is running the legal and administrative processes. Okay. In some jurisdictions, the VRO may be referred to as the Vital Registrations Office or the Vital Statistics Office, just like the MCO or MSO, Motor Vehicle Certificate of Origin, or Motor Vehicle Statement of Origin. Same things. They mean the same thing. They come from the same origin. They come from the manufacturer. Vital statistics consists of quantitative data concerning vital events in a population. In a population, what is that population? The population is the military and civilian public, and not the private sector. The private sector is conveniently mixed and commingled because the private sector has been convinced and believes that they have to go to the hospital to give birth. I urge you to learn how to just bear your young naturally. Learn how to make your own private journal about that event first and herald it out to the world in a certain form, hiding certain private data elements so they at least know that a star is born and he's auditioning for his place in heaven. Such as number of births and death rate. Vital statistics are derived from an analysis of vital records data. Without the data elements that you give them, they have zero value. Therefore, the data elements that you give them have some sort of value. If you don't give consideration for that value first and foremost, it will be displaced. And that displacement will prove to be a displacement and disposition of your own status in life. Momente more, momente vivere. If one knows they must die, then they must know they must live. So learn how to live first before worrying about dying. It's the journey, not the final destination, nor the beginning. Approach. NCVHS contracted with R. Gibson Parrish, MD, to prepare this report under the guidance of the NCVHS Subcommittee for Population Health, to identify uses and users of vital records and vital statistics and the types and sources of revenue available to vital records offices in the United States. Everything is for the vital statistics. Everything. And because you're claiming that you're a resident and a United States citizen, which is patently false, it throws them vital statistics off. Now, if those vital statistics is what's forming the commercial and business operations of this nation and other countries and nations around the world, then I pose that maybe we ought to correct the record and our entrance into it of the data elements that we think we're subject to be putting in there. This again is Hosea 4:6. My people are perished for lack of knowledge. The true benefit is knowledge, folks, not business and commerce, not insurance. So let's take a look. Findings. Figures 1 and 2 provide overviews of the birth and death registration processes, respectively. Greetings here, Chris. Respectively, both figures show the process of gathering information about the vital event on the left, including the types of people and organizations involved in the process. No mention of persons. No mention of persons. People and organizations, which is a person, but first came people. The middle panels depict the roles of state government in registering the vital event and providing data about vital events to various state and national users. The right panel depicts major national agencies and organizations that compile, use, and distribute birth and death records obtained from state vital records offices. The figures also depict payments made by various users of vital records to state or national organizations for the use of the records. So they're getting paid for the use of the records. What are you getting paid for the use of the data elements that you gave them? See what I'm saying? If there's no consideration, you're not getting paid. And if you're not getting paid, it's because you gave no consideration. So on this first one, we saw the chart. And the first part is the private sector. Second part is the state sector. The third part is the national sector. And like I said, if it's the national government's claiming that you were born in the United States and contract with an official of the state to create an enumeration at birth, then they're the ones that granted the state the power. Therefore, they're the grantee. The state is the trustee, leaving this party here as beneficiaries. So it's a local hospital, a local birth clerk, and all this that's gaining the commercial benefit. It's a benefit. They are always going to be able to use mom and that record as an investment. Look at your prescriptions and tell me when you get a prescription if that top left-hand corner doesn't have a red set of capital letters, 4 of them, in a yellow highlighted block. And tell me if those 4 letters don't represent the first 4 letters of your last name. And when you see that, recognize it as a firm name. And it's considered an investment firm. And it's investing in the medical society for vital health statistics. You will find this in every venue you enter. You go fill out that job application. You go fill out the driver's license. They want insurance of some sort. They want that Social Security number. Okay. So now, before we go down below, I want to show you this thing right here, where it says federal and state government N20 users. And remember here, federal government, academic institutions, researchers, healthcare organizations, etc. And it says many users. I've stated it's hundreds of users, and at that time I couldn't remember how many, but they quantify 500 here lower. I'll show you. But it says many users, and I want people to realize it says academic institutions, researchers. It's all for practice. It's commercial practice for business and commerce. It's all dependent on research. Every last bit of it. And when you find out how many people are using these records and the extent of the research that digs into every corner of your life, education is a practice. The legal system is a practice. Religion is a practice. Politics is a practice. Everything is a practice. Nothing's perfected. Yet they want you to perfect a title, which is blasphemy. And everybody wants to chase that bag and perfect that title. And I keep telling you, it's not about the name. It's not about the title. It's about the enumeration. Fix the enumeration. Remove yourself from the enumeration. And you can't be one that's supposed to carry the number of the beast. Sorry, I wasn't named or numbered. Fear not, for I have been redeemed. He has called me by thy name. Do you know thy name? If you don't know thy name, then maybe you're the one that's confused. Because I'm not supposed to know thy name until he calls me. I know he wrote his word on my heart with the right index finger, or the index finger of his right hand. So when it comes to the indexing, that's what I refer to. That's all I can follow for now. So let's take a look. Tells us the Department of Motor Vehicle, DMV, EAB, enumeration at birth, EBRS, electronic birth registration. And it tells you all of these. Immunization Information System. Immunization Information System. So when they make an offer to immunize you and you accept information of contract, that's what you've done. You just contracted to be vaccinated. And yeah, they're going to wax you all right. Wax and wane, wax and wane. Wax on, wax off, wax on. They're going to kick your ass. Secure Access Management Services. That's Sam's. That's your Uncle Sam. Secure Access Management Services. Then you got Uncle Steve, which is State and Territorial Exchange of Vital Events System. That's what we just talked about earlier. Those are your two uncles. Those are your two patronymical leaders. You know, there's only but one Father which art in heaven, but Yet everybody wants to have that secure access management service through the enumeration at birth so that they can have a state and territorial exchange of vital system events. And nobody realizes it's based upon that individual record when mom walks in and registers at the hospital for a spell of illness. You know how to spell Steve? Let's take a look at it. You'll notice on this one, we have a few more things added here. And before we get started with the left side of it, I'm going to point out this part right here. Notice before it had federal and state government, 20 users. And then down below it had the academic research, health organizations, and many users. And they didn't have this one here for the private sector, which it says there's 11 users. And they didn't have the health researchers. So now we realize that the enumeration at birth, creating a birth registration with the intent to be entered into the National Archives upon the registration of the death of that person that was born on that enumeration at birth, is totally for researchers, right? That only happens upon the death registration. So it was statistically for a research project. Violation of Nuremberg Code, voluntary consent or no? It's not voluntary if they induced you. So let's take a look at another part here. As I mentioned above, when we saw this here, there was a solid green line for the money thing here going over to NAFSIS. But now that we have the private sector, it's now a dotted line, and the solid line is here. You suppose as the member of the private sector, you might be one of those users if you correct the records, settle that account, and now you've established a monetary route for the transfer of credits. This is all electronic, folks. So there's not a transfer of paper money. It's a transfer of electronic credits, and they're already established. They're already established through the FICA, Federal Insurance Contributions Act, and the Social Security payments you've been paying all your life. That's an insurance credit proving that you have equity in the accounting. In every account, there's an equity amount. How much did you make working for that employer? How much do you think that employer made off of you and that certificate that he was using? Did you know that a lot of them employers out there will buy an insurance in your name? Yep. You gave them the information to do it. So they went out and bought an insurance policy in your name. That way, if you get hurt on the job, they don't give a shit about HIPAA and OSHA. They don't care if you go after them. They'll gladly pay. They just pay it out of your own fucking insurance. See, that's what you're doing, folks. So, as we see, just like the birth certificate, we have a death certificate sale. Why are they selling a death certificate after you passed away? Because it's a probate court. And they can do so until somebody stands up and professes a living will and disclaims the value of this corporate system. See? And just to show you, we're going to go back up and look at this other page. I got to break it down smaller. Again, like I said, you look in this top right-hand corner, you see there is only one box there in NAFAs, and now there's two, and there was a solid money line showing that the money is generating through the federal government and its users. So when we go down to the next one, we see that it's now generating with the private sector. It's got the actual money flow, and this is a sometimes money flow. It means in some instances, there may be money that flows from the federal and state government into the NAFSIS system. And then from the NAFSIS system, it goes from EVVE into the state health department. Whereas federal and state private sector, if you take control of that and like I'm posing the salvation and merger into a new name, you create the flow into the EBB FOD. What's that? Fact of death. Correcting the fact of death. Remember that enumeration at birth through your state statutes. I'm sure you will find that there's a burial trust that was created. Okay? And that's what we're talking about. That burial trust is already established as an estate, a probated estate, and it has a certain value. Here's that ISS, immunization. Immunization. And while we're on it, real quick, I want to remind people, when you go back through my videos, you'll see some older videos that may not be proper and correct, true, and to date. They were older videos, and some of the research and, well, much of the research that I've done since, a lot of them will prove that some of them are kind of erroneous. So it's just a matter of doing your research again. Don't believe me. Don't believe the neighbor. Don't believe the government. Don't believe your mother, for crying out loud. Do your research. So there are a couple of videos on the Social Security Numident. I would not recommend dealing with that, quote, data set as just a mere data set. As I'm speaking today, I'm talking about correction of the record, and that's a mandatory automatic declassification. And that's because there are variances from categorical pretreatment standards that are fundamentally different in nature, because you're provided a manual nationality chart rather than a declaration heralding the natality of a spiritual being, legacy heir. And that's why all of this is taking place, and it's causing a great confusion. As I'm sure many can see, that it's kind of confusing, isn't it, folks? I mean, you look at this and you try to figure it out, and it looks pretty comprehensive, and I'm telling you, it is. So again, even at the death, we see that we have a family member or an informant. Okay? And anytime there's a death, there's an investigation as to the death. And just as we see at the enumeration at birth, there's an informant. And again, that's an investigation that creates an investigation. That investigation is merely an investment. Again, I urge you to put on the full armor of God. Well, Chris, what do you got going on tonight, brother?
Oh, greetings. Can you see? Oh, there you go. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Greetings. Actually, just listening to you and working on my audio sound system for the studio here. Yeah, what you're saying brought up a lot of interesting thoughts. I was bringing some issues to the Attorney General's office earlier today, and kind of interesting, but in an indirect way, I kind of hit on some of the issues that you've been bringing up, and the gentleman that I spoke to was quite willing and happy to become learned on whatever he seemed to have a lack of knowledge about, and I don't want to get into the details of it, but it's what you're doing here is enlightening, even for the guardians of the system, as it were. They're appreciating.
Awesome.
Yeah,
awesome, because that's truly that's a main base of a lot of the important people that need to get this. Because if we can get them to comprehend this and do a further education, I think it would be more receptive than going after them to try to hang them and then trying to educate other people and then put them in place. These people already have a base of knowledge, and it's just a matter of correcting the knowledge. Forgive them, for they know not what they do. So if they're truly forgiving and repentant, then they would be glad to take on that new knowledge. And those are the kind of people we need.
I just see the innocence in a lot of them, and I can just by asking questions find out what they don't really understand, and ask in a way that doesn't upset their egos. And and yeah, I mean, as long as you're coming in an amicable way, and they and at least in my area of the world, they seem to be very accepting of but yeah, I mean, if you come at them in a with a angry, warlike kind of manner at all, they're of course they're not going to be receptive to it. But yeah, I live in the capital city in New Mexico here, and I've been doing a while, like going around seeing what these folks know and what they don't know, and they don't know so much. It's really interesting. I went into this particular department, asked them, it's called the State of New Mexico Indian Affairs Department. I asked them about their Civil Rights Department. And they said no such thing exists. And they invited me to sign up to be that guy. And then offered me this water bottle that is part of their, I guess, things they give to friendly people. And they gave me a pin. Nice pin here.
Nice.
It says I'm a volunteer for their office. But yeah, I would encourage others to do that in their area of the country or wherever you are. Work with your local state official people. They're not really. I'm of the opinion that they're really quite innocent, just ignorant for the most part. So
yeah,
with that, I'll let you get back to it.
Well, that's one of the things I was. I had to contemplate hard on myself in the beginnings of my research, and it was about a year after my court case. I had to really think back and realize, well, I'll be damned if I wasn't indoctrinated. It's not hard to believe that many other people could be indoctrinated too. So I had to change my aspect on it. I quit thinking about going after him for fraud and all this, and said, okay, well, let's go at a different aspect and teach myself first before I do any moves. And that's stuck to. That's what I've stuck to.
Well, I'll just touch briefly on the thing I went over with the Attorney General, is what we spoke on yesterday. Is I happen to get this presentment here from the disciplinary board, connected with the Bar Association people, and they actually did get the mailing address right for my client, my brother Adam. They got his mailing address right because we've enjoined the Secretary of the State through the Notary Public's office. And none of the banks or banking institutions would actually change the address so that it read care of the notary. They wouldn't do it. But when we asked the disciplinary board to send us a definitive paper form of the bar complaint, and I gave them the specific information, they send it correctly. And they also went to stamps.com and made themselves a stamp for their entity. Right? And so, it's not like, well, yeah, they got a .com and they're, contractors with the UPS and all of that. So I went to the Attorney General and I said, my client would very much like to open this letter, but he doesn't understand these symbols on the bottom of this thing here. What would those be? And he frankly said, I don't know. And I called the people at this disciplinary board, and I sent him an email, and I said, what is this? We can't open this without comprehending what that is. And they sent an email back, said, well, we don't know. And then I went over to the post office because they said, well, I think that's a post office marking. And I asked the postmaster over there, and he said, I don't know. That nobody knew what this was. So I went over with the people at the front desk from the Attorney General's office what this is, and we went on the internet, and he taught himself what this is, and then he explained it to me. But you know, just that, and you know, his willingness to look things up and learn what he doesn't know. That was very nice to experience that. It was just one thing I went over with them. You know, so now I can tell. Now I can tell the. Go ahead.
What did he tell you about that?
Well, he actually just read what he found off of the internet, but he said that this is a tracking system for the post office so that they can track this particular piece of mail. And then this code has something to do with some money exchange that's going on within this zone improvement plan. And this has a dollar sign with a code, and that has to do with a value.
Yep.
Yeah, this has to do with a commercial value. That because we're going to become a plaintiff when we fill this out against the agency, the attorney's bar card, who didn't give proper service of process to us and let us know that the judge in the case had appointed him over the case. So his first duty of law would to say, hey, this magistrate appointed me on your case because you didn't show up, right? That would have been his first duty and he didn't perform on that. So this disciplinary board agreed with me and sent me this and said, well, you know, we'll just go ahead and you fill that out and we'll make a case about it. And then, you know, that attorney is going to have a mark on his record for a breach of the due process.
Yep.
And right. But I feel like I'm kind of responsible for these bar people, like, and raising the bar and make sure they behave right.
Absolutely.
Because Adam is a Marine. He's a retired Marine, you know, so he has some duty to the United States still. And so we got to manage his account appropriately.
Pull his selective service up. I guarantee you, he's got a DD 214 that was used as a release to civilian service.
Right. And then I told the people over at the Secretary of the State and that they might be appointed as a fiduciary to settle a matter after I motioned the court to settle through their office and enjoin their office as a indispensable party, and they didn't seem to have a problem with that. So
Rule 19.
Yeah, and then I went over to the law library and I asked them for whatever their boilerplate documents were. A motion to motion the court for the settlement of the obligation, which we're going to do through the district court after we get the case moved. We'll motion the district court for settlement through the Secretary of the State's office. But I just asked all the authorities and all the people, you know, hey, is that be all right if I did that? And the people at the law library looked it up and gave me a book on the it's called The Art of Settlement. I told them I'm not a New Mexico licensed or registered attorney guy or whatever, and they don't care. Of course.
Yeah. Well, see, the thing is for that settlement, I think it's important to in regards to what you say is Walter, something, his name, your brother or whatever.
Adam. Yeah.
Adam. that DD 214 that he's got as a discharge from the Marine, it wasn't a discharge. I'm sure they probably used it as a release. So he needs to double check.
Well, we're going to use it. We're going to use it as a monetary instrument. Send that to the Secretary of the State so they could, once they're appointed as a fiduciary, so they could use that thing, since he's still in volunteer service.
But make sure that it's done as a discharge for full, used as on the discharge side, because like I said, they operate two ways. And I guarantee you, when he thought he was discharged from the Marines, I guarantee they entered it in as a release. And that means they released military services to the civilian sector. And he's still not.
Well, if they discharged him, then he wouldn't have any obligation. But he was released again.
So so he needs to direct it as a full acquittance and discharge, in my opinion, as a matter of estate recovery, because they are still administrating a probate estate in those administrative courts because of that. Again, it's a selective service is the one that's responsible for all administration and operations of any board or boards within its local jurisdiction. So it's the selective service that has the jurisdiction.
Okay.
So pull out the selective service number and say, hey, I need to correct the record now. Military declassification, automatic and mandatory declassification form 715, just like I was talking earlier.
Okay, that makes sense.
I agree. I agree. There are.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know that he wants. He doesn't mind being, like a reserve Marine man, right? He doesn't mind being that, but maybe he wants to change his classification.
Right. He can change the classification and still stand up to that part. So the important part is to change the data sets so that the data sets that need to go into the National Archives as statistics, sure, no problem. But private data sets need to be declassified and removed. He is no longer subject.
Sure.
And that's
he now operates a business. He operates a business like time and a half. Most of his time is going towards his business. So in that sense, he's still working, for the United States, operating his business entity.
Right, but he can do that as a private trust entity.
But if the Marines showed up and asked him to do something, he said he would be more than happy to help them out. So, whatever.
All right.
Well, thank you for that confirmation. I'll keep you posted on how that's coming through. But you're, what you're conveying in the way of knowledge is, appreciated by our local government people here, because they certainly didn't learn a lot. The education standard in this state is extremely low, unfortunately.
Well, across the board, America has a 7th to 8th grade reading comprehension. This information that I'm researching and reading and stuff, like you saw the charts, is kind of comprehensive. It's like 24th grade reading level, most of it.
I see.
So it's really not that hard. It's just a matter of learning again, to go back and unlearn the shit that they told you to remember and learn again. And that's a matter of the concise English handbook. Relearn what the English language really is and learn yourself how to be artistic with it. You can create your own manifestations out of it as long as you know how you're using them.
Right. Well, it's clear to me that we have to be responsible to know what we're doing if we're going to be counselors for people. Because those that have their hands on the controls don't even know what they're doing unless somebody's of a higher learning and higher authority comes and tells them what's up. I'm realizing that's a fact, probably everywhere.
And that's another thing people should remember. If you're going to be doing this stuff, you need to start learning how to contact the heads of the agencies. Those are the ones you need to speak to in regards to the liabilities and stuff. And you don't want to push the liabilities so much as the peace. Again, you want to show them that there's a greater truth in here, and what's actually happening is it's causing detriment and harm, and it could come back to bite them. It's already biting me. you know, and that's why I'm saying I'm giving you notice and knowledge. You know, it needs to stop, otherwise it's going to cause more damage, and I guarantee it's not going to look on you. I'm giving you notice now.
Yeah.
So
Well, I think people are just so habituated into being citizens of this society that it's kind of hard to change them overnight. So at least if they could be competent citizens, that would be a step in the right direction.
absolutely, absolutely. And as our brother Paul Baum has down here, says, to my knowledge, I don't remember ever swearing an oath to perform in an office of government, not to mention the records all false as a result thereof. And this is again as a reminder of Hebrews 6:17, where God gave the immutable promise to seek his counsel. And it's the same promise that he gave unto Abraham. It's the Abrahamic religions, whether it be Judaism, Christianity, or Muslim. So it's just a matter of accepting his promise, and that's the oath. That's the promise. There's already a promise, and there's already an oath. And these judges and all these other business operators, they're basing themselves on notes, which are promises, and drafts, which are orders. And all of that stuff's already been done. The command is with order. It's already there. That's what command means. It means with order. It's already been ordered. There is no power but that which is ordained of God. So think about that, and remember again, the true benefit is the knowledge. Also know, folks, I love you. I don't give a fuck whether you love me back, but be blessed. Have a good night. We'll see you again next time.
Thank you, Keith. Good night.